The last thing my father ever said to me was, "Don't open the cupboard." My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm a 38-year-old school teacher from rural Ohio, and what I'm about to tell you is something I've never said out loud. Not to my wife, not to my closest friend, not to a single soul. But I've carried it for 11 years, and some weights aren't meant to be carried alone. It started the night my father died. He passed on a Tuesday in November, the kind of cold Tuesday where the sky goes gray before noon and never changes. His name was Robert Mercer. Most people in our town called him Bob. Quiet man, kept to himself. Ran a small hardware store on Elm Street for 30 years. He was the kind of father who showed love through doing things fixing your bicycle, leaving money on the counter without a word, driving 3 hours in a snowstorm because you called him from a broken-down car on the highway. He wasn't the kind of man who said much, so when he spoke, you listened. The night he died, I got a call from Mercy General around 11 p.m. Heart attack. By the time I drove the 40 minutes to the hospital, he was already gone. A nurse handed me a small plastic bag, his wallet, his watch, a set of keys, and she told me that in his final conscious minutes, he'd been asking for me. She leaned in close, the way people do when they're delivering something too heavy for a normal voice, and she said, he kept saying one thing over and over. He said, "Tell Danny don't open the cupboard." I drove home in silence. My father's house sat at the end of a gravel road, half a mile outside of town. I hadn't lived there in 15 years, but I still had a key. After the hospital, I don't know why, but I drove straight there. Not to my own house, to his. The porch light was on, it was always on, and the door opened with that same low creak it had made since I was 7 years old. Inside, everything smelled like him. Sawdust, old coffee, the faint trace of pine from the fireplace. I stood in the kitchen for a long time. The cupboard, he meant I knew exactly which one. There was only one cupboard in that house that had ever mattered. It was built into the wall of the hallway just outside his bedroom. Tall, narrow, dark wood. It had a small iron latch and a padlock that I had never, in my entire life, seen open. Not once. I'd asked about it as a kid, and my father had simply said, "That's not for you." I'd learned not to ask again. Now I stood in front of it, the keys from the hospital in my hand. There were 3 keys on the ring. A car key, a key to the store, and a small old-fashioned key I didn't recognize. My hands were shaking, not from cold. I told myself I wouldn't open it. I told myself I'd respect his last wish. I stood there for probably 5 full minutes, just staring at that padlock. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. The padlock was already open. Not broken, not forced, just open. Hanging loose from the latch as if someone had unlocked it and left in a hurry. The door was resting slightly ajar, a thin line of darkness visible along the edge. My father lived alone. Had for 12 years, ever since my mother passed, and I was certain, absolutely certain, that no one else had a key to this house. I pushed the door open. The inside of the cupboard was deep, much deeper than I expected. The kind of space that shouldn't logically exist given where it was built. It was lined with wooden shelves, and on those shelves were boxes. Neat, uniform, cardboard boxes, each one labeled in my father's handwriting. Dates. Just dates. Going back decades. The oldest one read March 1987. I was born in October 1986. I reached for the nearest box, dated just 2 years ago, and opened it. Inside were envelopes, letters, and photographs. The photographs were of me. Not old photographs from when I was a child. Recent ones. Me walking into the school where I work. me at a gas station, me at my son's Little League game, dozens of them candid, taken from a distance spanning years. My throat went dry. I tore open the nearest envelope. The handwriting was my father's. "Daniel," it began. "I hope you never read this. If you are reading it, then I wasn't fast enough." I sat down on the hallway floor right there, my back against the wall, and I read. The letter explained something my father had kept from me my entire life. It was not a confession of something terrible. It was not what I feared in those first racing heartbeats. It was something else entirely, something that cracked my world open and rebuilt it at the same time. My father, for over 20 years, had been watching over me. Not in a natural fatherly way, though he had done that too. He had been watching over me because he believed with complete seriousness that someone else was also watching me. Someone who meant harm. He never used the word threat. He used the word him.